Hey guys, we are in the car and I thought I would record our conversation because we just finished one of my favorite podcasts, Modern Love, and it's basically like New York Times essays, and I think the column's been running for like decades, and they've now done a podcast and they read it and then interview the writer years later. So it's really interesting if you haven't listened to it already. But the one we just listened to was about a guy who has a no small talk policy on first dates so that he can get right into deep conversations and get to know people. And I thought it was really interesting, so I thought I'd like ask what Jamie thought about it and maybe talk about it, because we have 40 minutes while we head from Leamington to Birmingham. Sorry if it's shaking, but thought I'd try it out.
I'm trying to drive really steady. We'll be on the motorway soon and then it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah, I might hold it, but yeah, what did you think? Like in the podcast, they were saying how it was one of the most popular essays on the New York Times for 2016. It was a more recent one, I guess, but because half of the people really felt liberated about the not being able to skip the small talk, and then half of the people felt like that's just the natural way of people doing conversation, so why force it? But that was really interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I mean, I guess it's like, I can't quite remember what he deemed as small talk in the first place. I seem
like
to remember
whether,
it was like career.
Yeah, like what do you, like a resume builder, where it's like, what do you do? You know, like talk about the weather, like where'd you go to school?
Yeah.
Like commute to work, you know, really boring stuff that doesn't really tell you who you are as a person. At least in his mind.
I think for me, small talk is quite boring anyway, so I don't know that I'd ever fall into small talk stuff too much. Even like think about the other day when me and you went to the supper club. Yeah. We had some really good conversation with people there, and it wasn't so much small talk, right?
I don't remember how I started conversations with people now that you bring that up.
I mean, people asked about our career, but quite quickly we went from career to berating the education system around games courses, because they're all shit.
Yeah.
They don't do service. So it felt like we got into as a group of people, we got past small talk quite quickly.
Yeah, that's true. I think like I went right in and started telling people, oh, you know, we just moved to Windsor and we're like bought a house or settling in, so I wanted to meet new people. I think I went straight to like why we were here.
Yeah.
Like I want to meet friends. Like I think I said that pretty right away.
Yeah. So I think I feel like I probably like separate from the podcast or the story.
Yeah.
I feel like I rather gravitate towards getting into a more meaningful discussion anyway.
Yeah.
I'm trying to sort of cast my mind back to like our first date, and then but like even before like other dates I've been on.
Yeah. What do you say then? What's like your first like opening? It doesn't have to be first opening. What do you usually?
Well, I don't like talking about work anyway, because the jobs we do, as soon as you tell someone you make video games, it's like typically everyone's like, oh my god, that's such a cool job. It's like, and someone that doesn't do it perhaps has a bit of a kind of rose-tinted view on making games. I'm not trying to downplay it, because our job is pretty cool, right? But there's way cooler jobs out there.
Yeah.
That are way more interesting. But I do feel like whenever you tell people what you do, they all like, I don't know, there's a sort of like this weird sort of hierarchy appears of like, oh, you've got the coolest job, I'm not going to tell you about mine.
Yeah.
But then I don't want to know about, I don't necessarily want to know about people's jobs anyway. I'd rather get to know them a bit. Like, I'd rather know what are they into outside of their jobs.
Yeah.
so many people who don't come from the place that you meet them in. I think that's interesting, because that starts to open up a bit more of a kind of journey, figure out that journey of getting there, I guess.
I was thinking about like what kind of question I would ask on a first date that would be really a fun conversational starter, and I think I would ask, what's your favorite podcast? Because it would reveal a lot of that person's interests and topics, because it's such a podcast is such a proactive thing. Like, it's not a reactive thing. You have to go looking for podcasts, and it's something that you do when you have free time that you're listening to. So clearly, I think it's a good question, because it's really light, but it's deep enough that you'll be able to get that person's interest and what they're interested in, right?
What if they say, what's a podcast?
Then we're not compatible. Yeah, because Mags, one of my friends that I've met here in London, she was telling me her favorite podcasts, and it was really neat because I already knew we get along really well, but even with her, she was telling me about the guilty, because I was like, we started bonding over podcasts one time anyways, that we both like it, and I've been trying to find some British podcasts, because all of mine are just basically like, I brought them over and I've been listening to them in Seattle in the US. And so I've been wanting to find like British podcasts, and she's Canadian, but she's been in England for so long. She recommended like The Guilty Feminist, which is, you know her, so it's like totally what she would be listening to, because like we're both very, very passionate about feminism, but it's totally something that I would like. So already I know, oh, she's very feminist. And then what was the other one? It's on here, but I essentially subscribed to it right away. We started talking about it. It just kind of like expands our conversation right away, so I really liked it. I think it was like Global Pillage, No Such Thing as Fish, and Friday Night Comedy from BBC Radio 4. I think those were it. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I would straight up say Dan Savage, even though I don't know if on a first date you want to expose to someone that I love listening to Dan Savage, but I probably would.
Well, that's what you're asking. That's why you're asking the question, to find that from them. So I think you've got to be prepared to offer up.
Yeah, no, I know.
So I think it's not always just about a question, right? Sometimes you maybe need to offer something up yourself. See, there's another one of those caravans that's exactly the same.
It's probably very popular.
The Grand Lux.
Maybe there's a caravan event.
I think these are gypsies. The Majestat. They all look like gyppos.
There's a lot of caravans. But anyways.
The Puccini.
Yeah. They look like gypsies.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
What do you mean?
What did I mean by it?
Well, you're willing. What are you like?
I think if you're going into it in the sense that the guy wrote about, you've got to be willing to share as well.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm pretty open, so I would say Modern Love, Dan Savage, Guilty Feminist. Now that I'm listening to it, I really love it. This American Life, NPR Politics. I always rave about Hourly News app. It's not a podcast, but it's like an app that aggregates all of the news sources from all over the world, and that's really cool. It's really neat. I love it. Hidden Brain.
Yeah.
TED Talks and Radio Lab. See, it's you know who I am by all of that, I think.
Yeah, good idea.
What would you say? What would you answer to it?
If you asked me what podcast do I listen to?
Yes. Joe Rogan.
Yeah, Joe Rogan. Dan Savage. I like Modern Love as well, but you've got me into that. I listened to a bunch of super nerd podcasts, so then I'd be revealing my nerd hobby side.
Yeah. Which you are very comfortable with.
Comfortable with, yeah. Cool, yeah. Love my hobby. The Dan Catlin Horrible Histories, I think that's a really interesting one.
Yeah, you got me into
now and again.
Yeah.
Because they tend to be 5-6 hour epics, but you certainly learn something by the end of it.
Shows that he likes history, right?
But then I'll probably say I actually watch a lot of YouTube as well.
Yeah.
So then you get into that.
Yeah.
But then, is that small talk?
No, I don't think so.
You sure?
I think small talk is really not empty conversation. That's what I would define small talk. Empty conversation that doesn't get you anywhere to know that person that well. And you're just filling in there, like filling in time and space. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe. But food for thought, I thought that was an interesting conversation.
I did. Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
I think the other thing to take away from it, the reason, his whole point of avoiding small talk, it wasn't so one-dimensional about, it's just sort of, it gets you to a point quicker of knowing whether you want to have any relationship with that person. But his point was more about making connections.
Yeah.
It's not like you have to go into it and be like, hey, have you ever rode a wild deer naked through Costa Rica? And they're like, well, no, I don't know anything. It was like, there's all sorts of connections, and you can go meet people, have a date, and you can come away, there's not going to be any sort of relationship there, but you've made a connection, you've made a friend, you've suddenly found somebody that you connect with on a different level. I felt like that's kind of what his point was, getting out of a mundane and trying to make connections that were interesting. It doesn't always have to result in, sex.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool.
What's a good tip then? Because you're pretty good at that. Like, would you come prepared, regardless of if it's a date or it could be like, like a networking event or a social event, right? Like, do you come prepared with questions? If someone was asking you, like, oh, I'm really awkward at stuff like that, I have a hard time connecting with people, what would your advice be?
I ask questions a lot.
Yeah.
I think, I'm always interested to, hear, I don't know, whatever question is relevant to that point. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people are more forthcoming with an answer, and sometimes you've got to tweak it out so you can get some conversation going.
Yeah.
Because I think you definitely don't go in and be like, hello, I'm going to tell you all about me.
Yeah.
That's can be a bit rough. And then, but sometimes some people ask you a question and you answer it and you forget to kind of perhaps follow up, and you're just like, oh yeah, thanks. Oh yeah, sorry, no. Do you like fighting octopus in the Maldives as well? So I think be aware of those kind of things.
Yeah. If you're naturally funny, you're naturally funny. Like, if you're funny, it's easier, I think, because you can just crack a joke and relieves the tension. But I think, I ask a lot of questions. But I also, if I find someone isn't as open, I will be the first to open up a little bit. Show vulnerability or talk about myself a little bit, because then they get comfortable. I think I do that. But
I think as well, if you have a different opinion on something, don't let that be. Don't let it be like the end of any.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Friendship, relationship, whatever. It's okay to have different views on things. Clearly some are just not going to work, right? Some of them will be so extreme as others, but don't.
But you're right. Don't be afraid of difficult conversations, because it tends to be an eye-opener a lot of times, and it actually pulls you into a deeper conversation, right? Even if it's like a lot of times people don't talk about religion or politics or any of those things, and you always hear like the social etiquette is to avoid those conversations, but I actually think it's really enjoyable as long as you can keep your calm and be open to the other person's perspective.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
And that's the fine. That's a fine line to navigate sometimes, depending on the subject.
Yeah.
You sit down and you've got some hardline Brexit exit dude, and you're like, oh dude, I so don't agree with anything you're saying. That's probably going to be a struggle.
It'll be a frustrating conversation.
If you're both a little bit closer to the middle from either side of that, then maybe you can learn something from each other.
But yeah, food for thought, small talk versus big talk. What kind of questions you'd ask on first dates and first meets was a really interesting topic. So I